Hello everyone. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Today, we're going to dive into a heartfelt story. From the peaceful mornings in Huyen's vegetable garden, to the simple meals that Day prepares with his own hands, and the unexpected twists when the past suddenly comes back. From the bubbling pot of braised fish on the stove to the tense encounter with his ex-wife, this journey touches the heart, a place where love, choices, and trust are tested to the fullest. If you enjoy it, don't forget to hit subscribe so you won't miss the upcoming videos. That morning, the dawn light filtered through the dew-laden leaves, casting a soft glow over Huyen's sun-tanned face. She sat in the middle of the garden, hands deftly pulling weeds and trimming leaves, whispering as if confiding in Bibi, the little dog that always clung to her feet. Bibi, this batch of greens will sell well at the Tet market, won't it? Her voice was as gentle as the breeze, the kind that could lull someone to sleep. Each time the hoe touched the soil, it was a small beat of hope. Small, but warm. Huyen gathered the bundles of glistening green vegetables, tied them neatly, and placed them into the old, worn bamboo basket. Sweat rolled from her forehead down her cheeks, yet it couldn't hide the joy sparkling in her eyes as she looked at the perfectly straight rows in front of her. Bibi suddenly barked a few times, as if joining in, making Huyen burst out laughing. She bent down to scratch its head. "Stay home and guard the house, okay? Mommy's going to the market to sell some greens, and we'll be right back." She lifted the carrying pole onto her shoulder and stepped onto the red dirt path. In the still pale sunlight, her shadow and Bibi stretched long across the ground, looking like two inseparable friends. When Huyen passed the bamboo hedge at the end of the garden, only Bibi's barking followed her, both sad and affectionate. In Huyen's mind, there was only one simple thought: sell all the vegetables so she could come home and cook lunch for Maya and for the man waiting for her. On the other side, not long after Huyen had left, Dee pushed open the door and stepped inside. The house was so quiet he could clearly hear the ceiling fan clacking overhead. Still covered in construction site dust, he set his bag down and called softly, "Huyen? Maya?" No answer. Only Bibi trotted in from the veranda, rubbing its head against his legs, begging for a pat. Dee sat down, stroked it, his familiar deep, warm voice saying, "Just the two of us guys today, huh?" Without waiting for a reply, he stood up and started the fire. The kindling crackled. The scent of fried shallots filled the air. While cleaning the fish, Day talked to Bibi as if chatting with an old friend. "Today's fish is really fresh. Braised with pickled mustard greens, it'll be perfect. As soon as Maya smells this, she'll come running. You'll see." The rice cooker began its low, bubbling hum, and into the braising pot, he added a piece of galangale so the dish would have that wonderful fragrance and beautiful golden color. The once empty house suddenly felt strangely cozy. Day glanced at the clock. Huyen should be back soon, he muttered, though he wasn't sure. The sunset outside the window gradually turned crimson, casting his shadow long and lonely across the old floral tiles. Dee had no idea that in just a few minutes, a phone call would arrive, powerful enough to shatter the fragile peace he was trying to build with the still simmering pot of braised fish and the family meal waiting to be served. The phone ring sliced through the quiet, The fish was still bubbling when the screen lit up. Ms. Tui. Dee's heart skipped a beat. He wiped his hands on the towel hanging by the stove, took a deep breath, then pressed answer. Hello, you're back? He tried to keep his voice calm, even though inside he felt both anxious and weary. The voice on the other end wasted no words, only one curt sentence. Come meet me right now. Day stood motionless for a few seconds. His eyes darkened. He glanced at the pot of fish, then down at Bibi, who was looking up at him with round, innocent eyes. The dog seemed to sense that something was changing too. He turned off the stove, crouched down, and rubbed its head. Stay here and watch over Huyen and Maya for me, okay? I'll be right back. He threw on his old jacket and stepped out just as the sun was turning orange gold. The dirt road leading out of the hamlet was thick with dust. Dee walked quickly, but inside him raged a silent storm no one knew about. 3 whole years without a single word, and now suddenly she calls him back. What else could it be but divorce and property? He clenched his fists, trembling slightly, yet resolute. This time, everything has to end, he whispered to himself. The evening breeze carried the smell of dry earth, mixed with the faint, lingering scent of braised fish on his shirt. 2 scents, 2 different worlds, about to collide in a conversation as cold as ice. When Dieu reached the meeting place, Tui was already there. She sat inside a gleaming car, her makeup impeccable, every feature sharp as a knife. Tui looked at the dilapidated house in the distance with faint contempt. Day approached, faded shirt, hands in pockets, his voice calm but icy. So you really came back? Tui curled her lip. Half this house is still in my name. Why wouldn't I be able to return? The air between them thickened, almost tangible. Tui mocked the way he lived now, sneered at his new woman, ridiculed the poverty he had chosen. But Day only answered dryly, You have no right to talk about her. When Tui demanded a larger share of the land, and the tension exploded, Dee just wanted the divorce over with, so that both of us can be free. Words flew back and forth, each one colder and sharper than the last. Tui spat out, I should have been the one to leave you first. Dee only sighed. You left for 3 years, and I never blamed you once. Now you come back demanding your share. Fine, I agree. Just sign the papers, and we each go our own way. In the end, they found no common ground, except a cold nod. They would let the court decide. Tui got into her car and called her lover to pick her up. Day remained standing in the dusty road, his shadow stretching long across the ground. In the dying light, he looked both relieved at the prospect of freedom and pained as he gazed toward the little house, where the braised fish he had cooked was waiting, where the family meal was waiting. Huyen returned with an empty carrying pole, her steps lighter because she had sold every single bunch of greens. Sweat ran down her back, but her mouth wore a satisfied smile. When she pushed open the wooden gate, she paused for a moment. The braised fish was still warm. The rice cooker was on keep warm mode, but Day was nowhere to be seen. Day, she called. Only Bibi came rushing out, tail wagging furiously. Huyen sat down, scratched its head, and smiled softly. Where did Uncle Day go after cooking all this, huh? She walked around the yard, sprinkling lime to keep insects away from the vegetable beds, feeding the chickens, all the while wondering where he had gone. The house felt strangely quiet, as if missing a familiar sound. The slap of plastic sandals sounded at the gate. Maya came running in and threw herself into her mother's arms. "Mommy!" The child's bright laughter instantly chased away the fleeting worry in Huyen's heart. Maya chattered about school, proudly showed her perfect 10, told how she had swapped sandals with a friend. Bibi ran circles around mother and daughter, as if wanting to join the conversation. Looking at the meal that had cooled a little, Huyen said softly, "Uncle Day probably went to pick you up early and stopped somewhere." The sunset poured over the yard, draping the old house in warm gold. In that moment, even though one person was missing, the atmosphere was still filled with love. Simple, peaceful, and so genuine that one wanted to hold on to it forever. Dee stepped through the gate just as mother and daughter were reheating the food. The moment Maya saw him, she shouted, "Uncle Day is home!" In the tiny kitchen, the old low table suddenly became incredibly warm when all 5 members gathered. 3 adults, 1 child, and 1 faithful dog. The clink of bowls and chopsticks mingled with bright laughter. Maya innocently put vegetables in her mother's bowl, fish in Dee's, and prattled on with silly stories that made everyone double over laughing. Huyen looked at Day, eyes tender. "The braised fish is delicious. Thank you for your hard work." Day only smiled, said nothing, just carefully removed the bones from Maya's piece of fish and slid the bowl toward her. The aroma of braised fish and pickled mustard greens was so enticing that even Bibi, under the table, kept lifting its head to sniff. Maya teased, "Uncle D talks too much." Day pretended to be stern. "Tomorrow, I'm not taking you to school anymore." The whole family burst into laughter again. Under the dim, yellow kerosene lamp, every face glowed with happiness. No one mentioned Tieu. No one mentioned the court. All worries seemed pushed aside. All that remained was the hot meal, the little house, and the people who willingly stayed with one another, despite a past full of wounds. That moment was so beautiful, it almost made people forget that out there, a divorce judgment was waiting to close the past and to truly open a new future for all 3 of them. Night fell. The wind grew colder. Maya was sound asleep, and Bibi curled up on the veranda, listening to the crickets. When Huyen finished washing the dishes and stepped into the yard, she saw Day standing silently gazing at the starry sky. Moonlight poured silver over his shoulders, making his figure both strong and fragile. She walked up close, her voice soft with worry. "Did she make things difficult for you?" Dee turned, pulled her into his arms, his voice low but firm. "She just wants more land, but everything will be over soon." "I'm scared." Huyen lowered her face. "I'm scared you'll go back to her." Dee took her hands, gripped them tightly, and said with absolute certainty, "Never. In my heart now, there is only you and Maya." The night breeze blew past, carrying the scent of dry straw and wildflowers from the lane. Under the hazy moon, hanging above the thatched roof, the 2 of them stood in the dirt yard holding each other for a very long time. "If only every day could be as peaceful as today," Huyen whispered. "That would be enough." Dee gently kissed her hair. "I promise, it will always be like this." And in one tiny corner of this peaceful countryside, among the rustling leaves and the distant sound of roosters, they held on to each other, as if trying to grasp the fragile happiness tightly before tomorrow came. Before the divorce decree closed the past for good. and before a new future truly began for the three of them. The story follows Huyen, a devoted mother who tends her garden every morning to sell fresh vegetables for Tet, and Day, a humble man who cooks warm, homemade meals for their small family. One afternoon, the past suddenly returns when Day's ex-wife, Tieu, shows up, demanding property division and divorce after 3 years of silence. Facing pressure and conflict, Day remains calm, hoping to resolve everything quickly. Meanwhile, Huyen and Maya wait at home, creating a joyful family meal filled with laughter. By night, under the moonlight and chirping crickets, their love, trust, and simple happiness are affirmed, despite the looming presence of the past, quietly waiting outside the door. It's a story about resilience, family bonds, and cherishing the fragile moments of peace.